Hi guys, I hope you're well. In this video, we're going to have a look at components in Etch and in web development, essentially so that we can understand what they are, why they're so useful to our web development process and the work we do, and yeah, how we can get the most out of them. In future videos, in upcoming videos, I'm going to show you how to actually create a component in Etch and how to create props and dynamic props. But this is going to be more of the understanding what the concept of a component is. Now, the reason I thought this was a really good video to make is because me personally, coming over from the page builder land of Elementor, Divi, Breakdance, component is not a term that you encounter with those page builders, and yet it's a fundamental of modern web design and web development. So for me personally, it was a head scratch moment where it was like, okay, once you start using Etch, you are immediately confronted with the fact that you need to create components. But what are they? How does that how can I frame that with my current experience and then better understand it moving forward? As it's a head scratch moment for me during that transitional period, I thought it would make a good video for others who are encountering that. So yeah, let's move on with that. So this is more of the theory to understand it, and then we've got upcoming videos with practical examples. Although I will show you examples on this video now. Okay, so first of all, what is a component, and how does that relate to our page builder understanding, just to help us out? So in page builder land, Elementor, Breakdance, we don't encounter the term component. We are instead used to using terms such as templates or global templates or global blocks. I don't actually recall what Elementor calls it. I think it is global blocks. Breakdance definitely calls them global blocks. But essentially, it doesn't use the term component. And their attempt to create the component type of functionality is good, but it's not ideal. It's not more as pure, and it doesn't give you so many options as you get in Etch. You may have encountered components in bricks, although it's not something that most people do. I've never jumped onto a bricks site and seen that another developer has used components, if I'm honest. And I think that has something to do with, as people move up from probably Elementor to bricks, that there are many that just haven't thought to use components, or I'm not even sure when components came into bricks, to be honest. Still, it's not, it's not something you encounter much, but you bump into it very quickly in Etch, but it's usually called something along the lines of global blocks or templates. So what is a component? Let's understand that. Essentially, just like global blocks and global templates, it's a reusable chunk of elements that you've created on your site, and you would want to reuse those. So the header, the footer are items, collections of elements that might feature on different pages. We might have something like a blog card. So you would display this in a carousel or a grid. But first of all, in Breakdance and Elementor, you would create the global block that would serve as that card, and that is a collection of elements. It's got an image and a heading and a bit of text, maybe, and a button, and maybe a box shadow around that box. That is a collection of elements arranged for something visual or a functionality. So that is a component. It's a reusable element. Let's actually jump onto an example. I'm sure that would have termed it up for you anyway. But if we look at this page, this is one that I'm recreating in Etch as my own site. Excuse me, I got a cold for Christmas. Not my best present. So there are elements on this homepage, for example, the heroes section, where I wouldn't want to use this again on a different page. So this wouldn't serve as a component for me. However, it might be said that something like this form would be a component. It would be something that I want to reuse on different sections of the site. If we move down, there's a layout here which I might have interest in using. as something consistent across the site. I personally would think, yep, okay, I can use that as a component and make it so that these elements are editable. So the image, the heading, and the text, that would be editable in every instance of the component. A final example before we go back to the theory of it is that I wouldn't want to use this hero section, but I call this a sub hero because it's a sub page hero section. Other people call it a title section. But this is a collection of elements and layouts that I would reuse across all or most pages. So this makes sense as a component. It's a collection of the section, heading, and the text, all styled the same, and that makes sense to create that as a component, reuse it across the site. So we come there to the benefits of a component, which is essentially comes down to how maintainable, scalable, how maintainable and scalable our website is. We can reuse all of the elements. They're all tied to one source of truth for functionality or styling. And it means that scaling the site later on or creating more pages even, we can do that using previously created components. Edit all of the different details in their different instances, and obviously that's going to speed up the process of further development, but it keeps everything consistent. Like if we jump onto 10 pages and create the same collection of elements from scratch, we are without doubt going to find that we create some inconsistencies, maybe in padding, maybe in text size. However hard we try, it's going to be a little bit inconsistent. But creating these components, the styling is locked down, the functionality is locked down, and we simply change the details of certain properties, which are the component props. So components are useful because they speed up our future development. They speed up any editing because we edit the component in one place and it applies throughout all of the instances. So it's easier to maintain. And yeah, it assists with the scalability. It's the best way to kind of apply one source of truth to all of the different elements of our website. Now, just to make this clear on what can be a component, this breaks down into different elements. So a button, for example, can be a component. I've just mentioned layouts broadly there. So header, call to action, sub-hero section, team cards or cards. Those are collections of elements, but you can also save something like a button as a component. It's something you've created and styled. You can save that as a component and edit it across different instances. And this brings us into atomic design, which, looking into components, became something that I felt was quite important to address, because a lot of people refer to components and then patterns as the same thing, or the line is blurred. But it's kind of important to understand that you can have a component within a component. So then what is that? Is that you'd call it a nested component, that term goes around, or you can call it a pattern, which is a collection of smaller components. We see a pattern used in Gutenberg and it's referred to in Etch. So the terminology becomes a bit muddy, and the thing that I came across there that really helped me with that was Brad Frost's atomic design, which I found was really quite useful. If you actually just, I'll put it on screen. If you Google atomic design web developments, you're going to come across a great AI overview, and then this awesome link, this awesome image. But essentially what it is that it follows kind of like atoms, molecules, organisms to templates and pages. And this really helps us understand that we have smaller elements. So we've got search the site that's created as a set sort of label, and it would be tied to a selector, which is tied to a variable. So this is more atomic design. So if atoms are the basic building blocks of matter, then the atoms of our interfaces serve as the foundational building blocks. That now, if you use something like Figma, I use Affinity Designer a lot. Then you know that you can create an entire UI, and it would comprise of all of these different atomic parts, pieces. Then we have molecules, which is more like a group bonded together, and that's when we see these come together. So this is more of a molecule. Now this is certainly something that would make sense to save as a component. Maybe you would have an aside, like a sidebar, and you'd want this as at the top of that. It would make sense that it applies there. So you would want to create this once with all of the same padding and all of the same layouts, and then just slap it in wherever you need to. And then we have organisms, and you can see how this starts to work here. Organisms are relatively complex UI components composed of groups of molecules and or atoms and or other organisms. All right, so it's getting confusing now, and this is when I feel that we really come into the idea of patterns, certainly here, but this is what you might call nested components. And if I'm wrong on any of this is where my understanding is at this point in time, but this has been really useful to me. So we can create a component that I might slap on the top of every sidebar, but also I'm going to put that into my header component. And just side note, this will be then in a slot in your header component, just as the nav is in a slot in the header component. And you can see then how different elements comprise of different components can comprise of different components. So this would be a component, that would be a separate component. But if we create another template that needs something different on it, we might want to create a different header. And so it would be important to keep as much of that similar as possible. And here are some examples of what that looks like. I won't go any further on that, but I feel that that's an important part of understanding components, which is that they can be really tiny components, anything that you want to reuse across your site and keep it consistent, anything you might have to edit later on and you want it to edit across the site. Obviously, we're using variables and selectors in order to do that as much as possible, but components and the idea of atomic components to molecules to organisms, that really comes into play there. And yeah, I think that starting to picture and plan your web page in that way is going to help. Right, so let's have a quick peek at a couple of examples across different page builders so that you can understand it a bit more in the context of what you know already, which is certainly something I had to do. So here is excuse me, a component with properties created in bricks. And you can see here that this section is a component, and it has all of these set little elements. Now, this is when we can understand what props are, which are essentially the different properties of the component. So when you create a component, you're going to have the different elements and make them editable. So in this instance, I can change this property here to be anything I want. But the power of this comes in understanding instances. Okay, so if I add a new element, go to components, I've got a list of components that I've created, and if I add the hero, you see that we've got the hero at the bottom of this page. Now there's nothing in there, so we want to type something here, and we want to type something else here. I have no idea why that's not left aligned. But yeah, there's just a play aroundy one anyway. Is that something I can do. I won't do that now, but it's not important. But you can see that this component has a different instance and has all of the different information. So primary button, shouldn't have gone in there. So we've got primary button link, secondary text, secondary link text. So these are not very well organized as an example, but you can see that there's a default in there, and then we have click here or here. Then we would set the links, and this just means that we're able to create a different instance of the component, but they're different in their own right. They maintain everything else that we want it to maintain, such as the styling and apparently the alignment. But yeah, call that a glitch at a bad time. When we look at this one, so this is my Etch site, and you can see how similar it is, really. If I click on this sub-hero component here, we've got all of the different properties. So I've got a BG image, which you can't see because I have a different property that turns the image off, or I can just unclick it and toggle that. So this is a component with various properties. Now I can just add another component. So let's do what I did on the other site. I'll just add here. And what is this? Sub-hero. And a sub-hero is right beneath. That's great. So I can add a different image. I can make it so that that's visible. I can change the heading. And we can have some cool text. Now, obviously, I might think, damn it, I created this component and it's not as versatile as I would like. I need to change all of the text. That's the great thing about components. I could then go into this and edit the component and make any changes. And it's, for example, I might have a toggle that makes all of the so that I can have lighter text or something along those lines. I'm free to do whatever I want to do on that and edit only once. Again, it's reusable, scalable, maintainable, and consistent across anywhere that I would want to use this. And you know, you delete an instance of it, it doesn't affect anything else. Cool. Okay, so next video we will look at how to create a component, and maybe we'll look at atomic, molecule, and organisms and all that kind of stuff with Brad Frost's system here. But yeah, hopefully you found that useful. Again, this is the idea of these where I've scratched my head and gone, oh bugger, right, I'm learning right now, ouch. Then I just want to share those moments in these videos, and hopefully it helps you out also. Do apologize, a bit scatty, got a cold, but I wanted to get these out. Cool, thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye bye.